it at number 3 on my list. You know the movie is going to be awful from the get-go when you hear that John Woo directed it. My god, giving John Woo a war film to direct? You're playing with fire, and I mean literally. He just fills the screen with big slow-motion explosions and the most ridiculous war sequences. The one that comes to mind is when Nicolas Cage pushes that Japanese soldier in front of his own machine gun in order to grab the satchel charge. Yeah, I'm sure stuff like that happened all the time. By the way, the exact same thing happened in Broken Arrow, another John Woo film. And you know what I got tired of? Every Japanese soldier comes out charging instead of shooting, which just allows the Americans to fire from the hip and look cool, or just spray all around without aiming and sometimes even shooting the gun with one hand. And the millions of fiery explosions in slow motion that clearly aren't pyrotechnic charges, and it makes everyone do flips. I mean, John Woo must really have a fetish for slow motion explosions, because this movie is soaked to the gills with them. Take out World War II and the barely mentioned Navajo code talkers, and it's nothing more than your average John Woo action film. You know the usuals like Hard Boiled, Broken Arrow, Face Off, and Mission Impossible 2. Woo didn't seem to care all that much about exploring the story of the code talkers, which I think would be an awesome movie going into detail about. He just wants to show us as much action as possible in the battle sequences. It's all kind of weird because it seems like this movie was supposed to be anti-war. I got the feeling that what we were seeing was supposed to have a negative impact on us, but every single thing that happens in the battles are so ridiculous that it almost seems like a comedy. Were we supposed to be taking all this stuff seriously? I was laughing most of the time. Especially that scene when the Navajo codebreaker dresses up like a Japanese soldier and takes Nicolas Cage into the Japanese trench in order to get the radio. And then Nicolas Cage just starts blasting away at the Japanese with the machine gun in the trench. I was just laughing my head off. That's like something from Call of Duty. Except Call of Duty wouldn't have the Navajo disguised as a Japanese soldier. But actually, the funniest part would have to be when the American fleet fires at the Japanese defenses during the invasion. Take a look at the ships firing. That's like the most obvious stock footage I've ever seen in a major motion picture. I've never seen such a lazy directing shortcut in all my life. It's also full of cliches like the soldiers talking about their girlfriends and what they want to do once they get home. Also, in the land of movies, whenever you do a movie that takes place between 1930 and 1970, every redneck has to be a racist who becomes the minority's arch nemesis. But the racist always comes around in the end and accepts it. Speaking of characters, if this movie is supposed to be about the Navajo codebreakers, then why are the main characters two white guys? Yeah, the main story is about Nicolas Cage and his shell shock. The Navajos are no more than just supporting characters. They send Nicolas Cage out to Saipan with the codebreakers, even though he had a perforated eardrum. You know, that's why Frank Sinatra couldn't go to war. So there's no way he would have gone back into battle. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot. He gets the nurse to help him cheat on the ear exam. That's a little odd, because later on in the film he says, "God damn it! I can't do it! I can't perform my duty!" Well, if you can't take it anymore, then why did you go to the effort of getting the nurse to help you cheat on the ear exam in order to be sent back to war? Why didn't you just go home? So as I've said, Wind Talkers tries to have some deep meaning to it, but it's all just blowing up stuff and killing people in a hilarious way.
I'm a good fucking Marine.
Sure you are, Nicolas Cage. Sure you are. Number 2. God help us all, it's Catch-22 from 1971. This is by far the worst anti-war film ever made. It seems like it's got so many actors that it's hard to keep track. Alan Arkin, Bob Balaban, Jon Voight, Martin Sheen, Bob Newhart, Jack Gilford, Anthony Perkins, Malton Balsam, Richard Benjamin, Orson Welles, and Art Garfunkel. Art Garfunkel? Are you serious? What the hell are you doing here? Go back to the bridge over troubled water, man. The whole point of this movie is that it makes no sense, and it does that on purpose. The title Catch-22 is a phrase that basically means a non-win situation. Let's just have the doc explain it.
There's a catch. A catch? Sure, catch-22. Anyone who wants to get out of combat isn't really crazy, so I can't ground him. Okay, let me see if I got this straight. In order to be grounded, I've got to be crazy. And I must be crazy to keep flying. But if I ask to be grounded, that means I'm not crazy anymore and I have to keep flying. You've got it. That's catch-22.
That's the whole movie for you, hence the name. Which I don't get how they came up with that idea, because there's nothing like that at all in the real military. Well, it's not just that, but it's everything else in the film. Even the little things, like Martin Sheen talking about how you can love someone and only think you love them, or when Bob Newhart tells the sergeant that the only people that can come in to speak to him in his office is when he's not there. But that wasn't the main reason why I didn't like it. It tries to be anti-war by flat out saying that the military officers are all just stupid idiots, and the reason why we're fighting the war is just because we're bored. Take the scene when the general, played by Orson Welles, wants to kill his men because, I don't know, he's bored or he's crazy.
I don't think you can shoot him.
Why the hell can't I? Why not? You mean I can't shoot whoever I want to? Is that a fact?
Yeah, just like a real commanding officer. Also the scene when the nurse comes in and replaces the patient's IV with his piss jar. And there's of course the famous Major, played by Bob Newhart. They give him the rank of Major just because his last name is Major and they want to avoid confusion. But it makes it even more confusing because something that stupid would never happen. And holy crap, what about that scene when they pay the Germans to bomb their base to get rid of their unneeded supplies? Martin Balsam says it's all in their contract with the Germans and that's why they're fighting the war. Okay, forget about reality and let's just move on to symbolism, because that's obviously what they were going for this one. But I just can't figure out what the symbolism is supposed to mean. I think they're trying to say that the only reason why they fought World War II was for money. Well, that's not true at all. It was because the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and directly after that, Hitler declared war with the United States. If we hadn't fought the war in Europe, it would have been only a matter of time before they invaded us. There's a lot more scenes that just go against reality, but those are the main ones I can remember. If you're going to show that war is bad, then do it in a realistic way. There's great anti-war movies like Saving Private Ryan, Born on the 4th of July, or even Downfall. Realism is out the window in this movie. The writer is just forcing his retarded opinion on us. It's also messed up because it tries to be a comedy at the same time. There's always some stupid joke about being crazy in every scene Bob Balaban is in. He's a freaking Looney Tune. None of the jokes are even funny or clever. It all seems like rejected material from the writers of Hogan's Heroes. But then after it's funny, it tries to be all serious and tragic. There's a scene that it keeps flashing back to when Alan Arkin is trying to help a young wounded gunner in his plane. He tries to open his jacket to see the wound, but when he does, his entrails come pouring out. Well, okay, but why have only this scene be brutally realistic and have the rest of the movie be a frickin' cartoon? That leads me to this scene. While Alan Arkin is relaxing on a beach, one of the pilots comes flying in doing all sorts of tricks and maneuvers. I guess because he's gone crazy, as everyone does in this movie. While he's flying around, he decides to do this for some reason. I mean, what the hell good is that for? It's like something from an Itchy and Scratchy cartoon or Eagle Heart. I don't even know if this is supposed to be a funny scene or a tragic scene because the death is so cartoony but their reaction is so serious. Also, what was this whole scene supposed to mean? Same with this one. Arkin has some sort of dream sequence where he's swimming and he sees a woman take off her robe and she's completely naked. Can someone tell me what this means? Am I missing something? Why is this happening? What is the significance of this nude scene? There's no dialogue here and no commentary before or after about it, so I couldn't figure it out. Oh, wait, I forgot. This was made in the early 70s when they started allowing movies to have any kind of nude scenes they wanted. Movies like Midnight Cowboy, Straw Dogs, Deliverance, and of course, A Clockwork Orange took a big wet bite out of this opportunity. But after seeing this, I can honestly say this is the most unnecessary nude scene I have ever seen. To sum it all up, Catch-22 is really bad. It's a bewildering mess. And I don't see how they could have done this movie any other way to make it better. The idea was doomed from the start. Maybe I should read the book and see if it's any better. Maybe the author doesn't try and pound the message so hard into your head like how this movie does.
That's some catch on Catch-22. It's the best there is.
Alright, now it's impressive that Catch-22 was worse than Pearl Harbor and Windtalkers. So how could it get worse? Oh, believe me, it gets worse. Here it is, the #1 worst war movie ever made, Inglorious Bastards from 2009. Starring Brad Pitt and Christoph Waltz, Inglorious Bastards is a usual bad Quentin Tarantino movie made in a World War II genre. But the World War II story is so off the wall that it has nothing to do with history or even reality. It portrays the war as a big joke, kind of like Hogan's Heroes. Now, a lot of people have said, the only reason why you don't like this movie is because it has nothing to do with historical accuracy. Well, yes, that's one reason why I didn't like it, but that's not the only reason. Let me start by telling you my high expectations for this movie. When I heard that Quentin Tarantino was making a World War II film about rebel soldiers, I was psyched. I didn't really think about the fact that Quentin Tarantino was directing it. I just thought about how the story sounded. A platoon of rebel soldiers who become war criminals and go on killing rampages behind enemy lines? That sounded dark, psychological, and intense. I thought it was going to show how the horrors of war can eventually drive someone to complete insanity, where they don't even care if they win the war or not. They just want to kill people. But when I finally went and saw this in theater on my birthday, I was pissed. Turned out it wasn't dark, psychological, or dramatic. It was satirical, boring, insulting, and undeveloped. The first problem was with Brad Pitt and his so-called bastards. The first scene with them, he explains their mission. Drop into France and brutally kill and scalp German soldiers. No strategy, no ingenuity, just kill, kill, kill. There's no backstory to why Brad Pitt is so bloodthirsty towards the Germans. He just says that it needs to happen. I got the vibe that this wasn't something that he was born with. He became this way somehow. But Tarantino doesn't tell us. And then we cut to like years later, and they're all in France scalping German soldiers and joking with one another about how brutal they are. So they should actually be called Glorious Bastards. Now the American soldiers have just instantly become cocky, bloodthirsty murderers. Can we have some character development here, or some explanation? How did they go from regular soldiers to psychopaths? But what also doesn't make sense is that Brad Pitt tells us that all they're going to do is kill German soldiers and Nazis. No matter what, just kill them. But he lets one of the prisoners go for some reason, and then later on in the film, he reasons with a German soldier to let him take one of their allies away, and they'll let him live. So make up your mind, does Brad Pitt want to be a ruthless killer or not? But anyway, back to the scalping. This is actually a flashback from a German soldier they let live, and he's telling Hitler the story about what happened. What's that in the background? Looks like a map of German-occupied territories from the early 1940s. But this is supposed to take place in 1944. The Battle of North Africa had been lost to the Germans 2 years ago, and half of Italy had been lost in 1943. Not to mention that during those losses, the Soviet Union had pushed the Germans far back west. Either Quentin Tarantino didn't care about authenticity here, or someone really needs to update that map. Sorry, I'm getting a little off track here. I'll get to historical inaccuracies later. Anyway, during the flashback of the bastards scalping the soldiers, we see that their sergeant, played by Eli Roth, likes to bash prisoners' heads in with a baseball bat. Funny, right? What the hell are you doing here, Eli Roth? Go back to making your god-awful slasher movies.